The knock came just after midnight. Sharp, hurried, desperate. At first, I thought I was dreaming. My son had fallen asleep on the couch beside me, cartoons still playing softly on the muted TV. The rain outside had turned into a solid sheet, hammering the window so hard it blurred the world beyond the glass. Then came another knock, 3 quick hits, followed by a muffled voice. "Please, is anyone home?" I froze. My house sat near the edge of town, where the streetlights thinned and the woods began. Nobody came here uninvited. I'd chosen this old rental for the quiet, for the peace that came after too much chaos, after my ex-wife left and took every ounce of trust I'd ever owned with her. Still, something in the voice made me move. I set my empty mug on the table, covered my son with a blanket, and walked to the door. When I opened it, the rain seemed to rush in with her. A woman stood there, drenched, shivering, mascara running down her face. She looked like she'd stepped out of a nightmare. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her clothes soaked through, and she clutched a torn handbag against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I'm sorry," she stammered, voice shaking. "My car broke down. I didn't know where else to go. There's no service out there, and your porch light was on. Please, just for a night." She didn't look dangerous. She looked wrecked. Something inside me hesitated, but the father in me, the one who had been teaching his 7-year-old boy about kindness, answered first. "Come in," I said. She stepped over the threshold, dripping rainwater onto the wooden floor. The next 10 minutes blurred. I fetched her a towel and one of my ex-wife's old sweaters from the storage box. She sat on the couch, trembling as steam rose from the mug of tea I handed her. The smell of chamomile filled the room, mixing with a faint scent of rain and pine. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. "No problem," I said, watching her carefully. "You okay? You hurt?" She shook her head. "Just scared. I was driving from the city, coming back from visiting my mom. My phone died, then the car started smoking. I saw your light in." She trailed off. Her voice cracked on the last word, and when she looked up, her eyes were glassy but steady, gray, stormy, searching. "I'm Harper," she said after a pause. "Harper Lane." "Daniel," I replied. "Daniel Cross." I didn't tell her much else. Old habit. By 1 a.m., my son had woken up, rubbing his eyes, confused to see a stranger sitting in our living room. Harper smiled at him softly, the kind of smile that felt gentle, practiced, maybe even protective. "Hi there," she said. "You must be the man of the house." He giggled, shyly hiding behind me. "This is Ethan," I said. "Go back to bed. Buddy, it's late." Ethan nodded, still glancing curiously at Harper as he shuffled down the hallway. She watched him go, her eyes lingering longer than I expected, something tender in her gaze, but also unreadable. "You're a single dad?" she asked quietly. "Yeah," I said, pouring myself another coffee. "Been that way for almost 3 years." She nodded slowly, as if that fact carried more weight than it should. When I offered her the couch for the night, she didn't argue. She curled under a blanket, said thank you again in that soft, broken tone, and closed her eyes. I stayed up a little longer, staring at the storm, listening to the house breathe. There was something strange about her silence. Not just tired, guarded, like she was rehearsing what to say if anyone asked. But I told myself it didn't matter. I'd done a good thing. That's what I wanted to believe. The morning after, I woke up to the smell of coffee. For a moment, I thought it was my ex, muscle memory playing tricks. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, warm and golden, cutting across the floorboards. Then I remembered. Harper. She was in my kitchen, hair tied back now, wearing the sweater I'd given her, humming quietly to herself. My old radio played some soft country tune. "Morning," she said when she saw me. "Hope you don't mind. I made breakfast. Pancakes, eggs. You were out of milk. It was disarming, too domestic, too normal for someone who'd just shown up at my door like a ghost. "You didn't have to," I said, rubbing my neck. "I wanted to. Least I could do after, saving me from freezing out there." She smiled, and for a fleeting second, I saw something genuine. a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Ethan came running in next, still in his pajamas, grinning at the smell of food. Harper laughed and flipped a pancake onto his plate. It was strange, the way she fit. Too easily, too comfortably. By the time breakfast was over, I'd caught myself smiling more than once. But then, she made that call. She'd stepped outside, saying she needed to contact a tow truck. I didn't think much of it. But through the open window, I heard her voice, low, sharp, urgent. "No, he doesn't know yet," she said. "Just keep your phone on. I'll handle it." My pulse quickened. Something about the tone, controlled, practiced, didn't match the scared, stranded woman from last night. When she came back in, her expression was calm, her smile perfectly placed. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said easily. "Tow truck's on its way. Should be gone in a bit." But I knew. Something was off. When the truck arrived half an hour later, she hugged Ethan goodbye, said she'd never forget our kindness, and thanked me once more. Then she was gone, vanishing down the rain-washed road, leaving behind only the faint scent of my ex-wife's sweater and a strange unease crawling under my skin. I told myself I'd forget her. But by evening, 2 police cars were parked outside my house, lights flashing red and blue across the wet driveway. And when the officer stepped out, his voice was flat, rehearsed, like he'd said this too many times before. "Mr. Cross," he said, "we need to ask you a few questions about a woman named Harper Lane." The flashing lights painted my living room red and blue, pulsing like a heartbeat gone wrong. Ethan stood at the top of the stairs, clutching his stuffed bear, eyes wide with confusion. "Dad, what's happening?" I forced a calm I didn't feel. "It's fine. Buddy, go to your room. Okay? I'll be up soon." He hesitated, then nodded and disappeared upstairs. The officers stepped inside, boots dripping rain onto my floor. The air carried that metallic scent of wet asphalt and cold authority. The lead officer, mid-40s, sharp eyes, jaw like granite, flipped open a small notebook. "Mr. Cross," he said, "we're investigating a report filed earlier today by a woman named Harper Lane. She stated she stayed here last night." My mouth went dry. "Yeah." She said her car broke down. I let her stay on the couch. He nodded slowly, eyes studying me like a chess piece he'd already predicted. "She told us she found evidence of stolen property in your home." For a second, I couldn't even process the words. "I'm sorry, what?" She claimed she saw expensive electronics, jewelry, and items matching reports from a burglary 2 nights ago near Brookfield Estates. I blinked. "That's insane. I've never even been near Brookfield Estates." The officer exchanged a look with his partner, then said, "Mind if we take a look around, sir?" The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I wanted to say no, that they'd need a warrant, but the last thing I wanted was my son watching cops tear through our house. "Fine," I said through clenched teeth. "Do whatever you need." They moved methodically, one upstairs, one through the kitchen, one into the small room I use as an office. I followed, trying to make sense of it all. Why would Harper lie? Why would someone go through that much trouble just to... "Sir," one of the officers called out, "can you come here for a moment?" My stomach dropped. He stood in the hallway holding something I hadn't seen before. A small velvet jewelry box. Inside it was a gold necklace. I didn't recognize it, but I knew how it looked. Expensive. "Is this yours?" he asked. "No. I've never seen that before in my life." He looked at me for a long second before nodding and sealing it in an evidence bag. The other officer was already jotting something down, voice low into his radio. I caught fragments, matches a description, found in residence. My pulse pounded. This couldn't be happening. By the time they were done, the rain had turned into a fine mist. They didn't arrest me, just left me with a polite but heavy warning. "Don't leave town," the lead officer said. "We may need a statement." When they drove off, their lights fading into the fog, I stood in the doorway, completely still. My hands were shaking. The couch where Harper had slept was still indented, blanket folded neatly. My son's breakfast plate still sat on the table, syrup hardening around the edges. Everything looked exactly the same, except me. because something inside had shifted. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house made me flinch. Every sound from the street made me think of engines idling, eyes watching. I kept replaying everything Harper had said, every expression, every word. Her story about her mom, her broken car, her tone when she said, "You're a single dad," like it meant more than it should. By morning, I couldn't stand it anymore. I pulled out my laptop and searched for her name. Harper Lane. No social media. No local records. Nothing. Then I remembered something. When she'd handed me her mug last night, her hand had trembled slightly, and I'd caught a glimpse of a small tattoo near her wrist. Just a single letter. Ah. I searched again. Harper Lane Tattoo R. And that's when I found it. A local news article. 6 months old. Police are still searching for Harper Ray Lane, a suspect in multiple fraud cases involving identity theft and false reports. My breath hitched. The photo was grainy, but it was her, no question. By the time I called the police, she was long gone. They said they'd update the file, but I could hear the fatigue in their voices. Cases like this weren't priorities. That's when something darker took root in me, a mix of rage and helplessness that burned hot and steady. Because she hadn't just framed me. She'd looked at my son. She'd sat at my table. She'd known exactly what she was doing. And worst of all, she'd said something before leaving that morning. Something that now wouldn't stop echoing. "You're a good man, Daniel. The world doesn't deserve you." It wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. The call. It was 3 days later when the real blow landed. I'd just dropped Ethan at school when my phone rang, an unknown number. "Mr. Cross," a woman's voice said. "This is Officer Trent from Child Protective Services." Every muscle in my body tensed. "Is everything okay?" "There's been a report filed," she said carefully. "We received an anonymous tip suggesting your home environment might be unsafe for your child. We're required to conduct a welfare visit this week." My vision blurred for a second. She said what? I whispered. "I can't disclose the source," the officer replied, "but the report included detailed notes about recent police activity at your address, claims of stolen property, alleged erratic behavior." My knees almost gave out. It wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. This was deliberate. She'd made that call, the one that changed everything. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the rain streaking the window. I'd been through betrayal before. My ex-wife affair, the slow collapse of a marriage built on lies. But this was different. This was a stranger walking into my life and ripping away what little stability I'd built for my son. And she hadn't done it for money. No, this felt personal. I couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd looked at Ethan. The faint tremor in her hand when she'd touched his hair. The way her eyes had softened for a second, almost mournful. There was something she wasn't saying. Something she knew. I didn't tell Ethan much, just that some people made a mistake, and that we'd sort it out soon. But even at 7, he was perceptive. "Is it because of the lady from the storm?" he asked quietly one night. I froze. "Why do you think that?" He shrugged. "I heard her talking to someone on the phone. She said your name. And she said, he doesn't know." My heart stuttered. "She said I looked just like someone she used to know," he added. Then she cried. The room tilted slightly. "She said you looked like her brother." I sat there long after Ethan fell asleep, every nerve in my body alive with a truth I couldn't yet reach. Brother. Harper Lane. Harper Ray Lane. The R tattoo. The sudden familiarity. The way she'd known things she shouldn't. I went back to the article, zooming in on the grainy mugshot until it blurred. Then I noticed it, something small in the corner of the photo, almost cropped out. A name tag on her shirt, from a youth shelter where I'd volunteered years ago, back when I was still married, still trying to fix other people because I couldn't fix myself. Her last name had been Ray back then, and there had been another kid in that program, a runaway girl, 16, angry, bruised, broken. I remembered her face now. Her name had been Harper Ray, and I had promised her I'd help her find a home. I didn't sleep that night. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was Wells, thick, hollow, echoing every unanswered question in my head. The name Harper Ray burned behind my eyes like a ghost refusing to fade. I sat at the kitchen table, Laptop open. Phone beside me. The screen's glow painting my face in cold light. Every few minutes, I type something, delete it, then start again. Harper Ray Youth Shelter 2011. Harper Ray Runaway. Harper Ray Missing Person. Dozens of hits. Most irrelevant. One not. A forum thread, buried under years of junk posts. Someone had written about a runaway girl who vanished after her older brother betrayed her trust. I clicked it open. The username meant nothing, but the story did. She trusted him. He promised to keep her safe. Instead, he called child services. She was taken back to her foster home. A week later, she ran again. Nobody's heard from her since. My chest tightened, because it was true. Back then, I'd been volunteering part-time at a youth center in the city, trying to feel useful after my marriage began to crack. Harper was 16. Angry, wild, the kind of kid who'd built her whole world around not trusting anyone. She'd open up sometimes, but only in fragments. Stories about foster homes, men who shouted too loud, nights she spent sleeping behind gas stations. I'd seen myself in her somehow, the broken parts, the way she still believed in something better even when everything told her not to. She'd called me her friend. I'd called her kiddo. When she told me she planned to run away with some older guy, I panicked. I thought I was doing the right thing when I told the shelter director. They called CPS. And that night, she looked at me through the back window of the patrol car. Betrayal carved into every tear running down her face. "You said you'd protect me," she'd screamed. Then she was gone. Now she was back. And she destroyed my life with one phone call. But it wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. This was something else. Personal. Deliberate. Controlled. Like she wanted me to remember. I drove to the police station the next morning before sunrise. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Officer Trent from CPS was already there, clipboard in hand, eyes wary but kind. "Mr. Cross," she greeted. "I just wanted to let you know the visit will happen tomorrow at noon. It's routine, nothing to panic about." "Routine," I said, my voice shaking despite how hard I tried to steady it. "Someone lied to you. She lied. She's framing me, and you're calling it routine." She sighed, sympathy flickering across her face. "I understand how this feels. But the process." "No," I cut in. "You don't understand. I know who she is. Her name's not Harper Lane. It's Harper Ray. I knew her years ago. She's someone I failed." That made her pause. "Failed?" I nodded slowly. "And now she's punishing me for it." The CPS officer promised to make a note of it, but her tone told me not to expect miracles. The system moved slow. Harper knew that. When I got home, the morning light filtered through the blinds, soft but merciless. Ethan was still asleep on the couch. He'd insisted on staying close to me last night. His hand was clutching mine, even in dreams. I sat beside him and watched the rise and fall of his chest. For a long moment, all I felt was guilt. Because the truth was, Harper had every reason to hate me. I thought I was saving her, but I just handed her back to a system that chewed her up. Still, she could have confronted me. She could have yelled, cursed, screamed. Instead, she'd gone after Ethan. And that I couldn't forgive. By noon the next day, the CPS visit was underway. A woman named Carla walked through the house, clipboard in hand, checking every detail like she was grading me on my worth as a father. She was polite but distant, neutral in the way only bureaucrats could be. Ethan tried to act normal, offering her his drawings, showing her his toys. I saw the confusion behind his smile, the fear behind his curiosity. When she finally left, she said, "We'll be in touch soon." The moment the door closed, Ethan turned to me, eyes watering. "Did I do something wrong?" he whispered. "God, that broke me." I dropped to one knee, pulling him into my arms. "No, buddy, none of this is your fault. Not a bit of it." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Kids always know when something's wrong, even when you lie with love. That night, I poured a drink for the first time in months. I sat in the dark, rain starting again outside, and stared at the empty couch where she'd slept. How easy it had been for me to open my door, to trust a stranger, maybe because I'd been lonely, Maybe because I wanted to believe in something good again. But it felt like Harper had seen that weakness, studied it, even, and used it to cut deeper than any knife. Then, around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just words. You still don't get it. You never did. I stared at it, heart pounding. Then another message. You think I wanted to hurt you? I wanted you to see. To feel what it's like to lose everything because someone said they were helping. And then a photo. It was old. A faded Polaroid. A girl, maybe 16, standing outside a foster home. Her smile forced, eyes red. Behind her, a social worker with a clipboard. Me. I dropped the phone. For the first time since that night, I cried. Not out of fear, but because I finally understood the depth of what I'd done. I'd saved her life, maybe, but I'd killed something else in her. The small, fragile trust she'd offered me when the world had given her nothing. And now she was returning the favor. I called the police again, but they couldn't trace the number. They said it was likely a burner phone. I could file a harassment report, but these cases usually go cold. Of course they did, but I couldn't let it go cold. Not when my son's safety was at stake. So I did what I swore I'd never do again. I went digging. I started by tracking the tow truck company she'd supposedly called that morning. The dispatcher didn't remember her name, but he remembered the call. She was calm, he said her car was near your address, but when our driver got there, the road was empty. No car, no woman, no car. She'd walked there, planned it, everything, her arrival, her breakdown, the timing, it had all been orchestrated. I hung up, my stomach twisting. Why now, after all these years? Why bring my son into it? Unless she wasn't just punishing me. She was warning me about something else. That night, I went through the old photo albums my ex-wife had left behind. In one of them, our wedding anniversary album, there was a photo of me, younger, holding a stack of papers at the youth shelter. In the corner, blurred but visible, was Harper, and beside her, my ex-wife, smiling. My heart froze. My ex, Lily, had worked part-time at that same shelter during college. I'd forgotten that. She'd been the one who would help process Harper's case file. I turned the photo over. A date. A scribble in my ex's handwriting. The day we met Harper. She reminds me of someone. That was the moment everything started to tilt. Because if Harper had known Lily back then, if she'd known me and the family I'd built afterward, then maybe this wasn't just about me failing her. Maybe she'd come back to destroy something bigger, something tied to what Lily had done before she walked out of my life. And maybe Harper wasn't lying about everything. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like wet asphalt and old secrets. I couldn't look at that photograph again. My ex-wife's smiling face beside Harper's younger one. It felt like a fractured line running straight through time. All these years, I blamed myself for what happened to Harper. But what if Lily had been part of it too? What if Harper hadn't just come back for revenge, but for answers? And I was the easiest door to knock on. I made coffee I didn't drink. I stared at the steam rising from the mug, at the swirl that never settled. Ethan was coloring in the living room, humming softly to himself. He'd drawn a picture of me, him, and our old dog we used to have before the divorce. Simple, innocent, and for the first time, I realized just how fragile that innocence was, how easily one phone call, one lie, could crack it. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, the same reckless curiosity that had opened my door that stormy night, forced my thumb to swipe. Hello. Silence. Then her voice. Soft. Familiar. Broken. You remember now, don't you? My chest tightened. Harper, what do you want from me? A pause. I could hear the faint rustle of traffic behind her, or maybe wind through trees. I want you to stop pretending you were the hero. I gripped the phone. I never said I was a hero. I tried to help you. You were 16. You needed. I needed someone to believe me, she snapped. Her voice cracked, fury laced with pain. You thought I was just another damaged kid you could fix. You didn't listen when I told you about her. I froze. Who? Another silence. Then she said a name I hadn't heard in years. Lily. My blood went cold. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, her words echoing in my head. You didn't listen when I told you about her. Lily, my ex-wife. I stared at the old photograph again, tracing my finger over her smile, the one I'd fallen for, the one that had vanished slowly over the years. She'd left me 3 years ago, out of nowhere. Said she needed to find herself. Said she couldn't live with the weight of everything we'd buried. At the time, I thought it meant us. The fights, the distance. But what if she'd meant something else entirely? That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I opened the last email Lily had ever sent me. I'd never deleted it. Daniel, you're a good man, but you keep looking for broken things to fix. You never realize some of them didn't want saving. I'd always assumed it was about our marriage, but now I wasn't sure. I checked the timestamp. Sent 2:13 a.m., just days before she left. Attached to it was a photo, one I'd ignored back then. It looked like a scanned page from an old file, a case record. I opened it and froze. It was Harper's intake form from the youth shelter, but someone, Lily, had written notes in the margins. Check background again. Placement request from R. Lewis. Police inquiry closed too early. Harper says she remembers faces. Watch her carefully. My hands trembled. Police inquiry. Watch her carefully. What the hell had Lily gotten herself into? I drove to her last known address the next morning. A small apartment complex across the bridge, the kind where you could hear every neighbor's argument through paper-thin walls. Her name wasn't on the buzzer. The landlord, a tired man with nicotine-stained fingers, told me she'd moved out a year ago. Left no forwarding address. But when I mentioned Harper, he paused. Yeah, he said slowly. There was a woman by that name here once. Younger, maybe late 20s. Came asking for Lily a few months back. Left angry. Did she say what she wanted? He shook his head. Just said, she knows what she did. Then she left. Back home, I sat in the driveway for a long time, engine off, rain starting again in light drizzles. Ethan was at school. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I couldn't stop picturing Harper in that same apartment. Standing in the doorway, hearing the same landlord tell her Lily was gone. The anger in her eyes. The loneliness. The need for closure turning into something darker. And that's when I realized this wasn't just revenge. It was unfinished business. That night, as I was tucking Ethan into bed, he asked something that made my heart stop. Dad, who's the lady that keeps watching our house? I blinked. What? She was outside the window yesterday. I saw her by the mailbox. My throat went dry. What did she look like? He shrugged. Like the rain lady. But she didn't look mad. Just sad. I checked the curtains, but by the time I looked, nothing. Only the faint shimmer of wet streetlight on pavement. But I knew. She was out there, watching, waiting. The next day, I went to the shelter where I'd first met her, now under new management. The building had changed, fresh paint, new logo, but the smell of old floors and paper was still the same. The receptionist, a young woman with bright eyes, frowned when I asked about old records. We're not supposed to release client files, she said. It's not official, I replied. It's personal. I knew someone from here, Harper Ray. Her expression shifted. You knew Harper? Yes, I said cautiously. Why? She hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. We got a letter about her 2 months ago. No return address. Just said, if you still have my file, burn it. Burn it? The woman nodded. There was also a note attached. It said, she looked around before continuing, tell Daniel Cross he owes me the truth. My heart skipped a beat. She mentioned my name. Yeah, it freaked us out. We thought it was some prank. You're Daniel Cross. I nodded, barely breathing. I left the shelter in a daze. The air outside smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and rust. My reflection in the car window looked like a stranger's, haunted eyes, gray around the edges, a man chasing ghosts that refused to stay buried. What truth did I owe her? I'd told the truth back then. Or so I thought, unless Lily had lied. Unless Harper had tried to tell me something, and Lily had covered it up. That would explain the notes, the police inquiry, the missing records. Lily had known, and Harper had come back not just for revenge, but to expose what my wife had done. That night, I dreamt of the shelter again, the flickering hallway lights, the smell of cheap disinfectant, the soft sound of Harper's voice saying, "You said you'd protect me." When I woke, there was something heavy sitting on the front porch. A box. No return address. No name. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was a stack of documents, copies of old case files, my volunteer badge, photos from the shelter days, and one police report dated November 2011. I unfolded it carefully, heart pounding. Incident report, Harper Ray, minor. Filed by Lily Cross. Description: subject claims to have witnessed illegal activity involving staff. Discrepancies found in statement. Case closed due to lack of evidence. I read it twice before it sank in. Harper hadn't been in trouble because she'd run away. She'd been in trouble because she'd seen something. And Lily, my wife, had filed a report that silenced her. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My wife, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman who'd looked me in the eye every morning for years. She'd been the one who buried Harper's truth. And I'd been the fool who helped her do it. I dropped the papers onto the floor and leaned back against the wall, breath shaking. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly again, like the storm from that first night was circling back, demanding an ending. I finally understood what Harper wanted me to feel. Not fear, not pity, not revenge. Recognition. She wanted me to see her, to finally acknowledge the truth I'd ignored all those years ago. But that realization came too late. Because as I picked up my phone to call the police, I noticed another envelope tucked beneath the stack of papers. No name, no stamp, just 5 words scrawled in familiar handwriting. She's not done lying yet. The night cracked open with thunder again, like deja vu with sharper edges, the kind that made the air taste metallic, like fear. I sat on the living room floor surrounded by papers, photos, and ghosts of a past I thought I'd buried. The envelope's message, "She's not done lying yet," burned through my mind like a warning from a place I didn't want to visit again. She, Lily, wasn't done, isn't done, meaning she was still out there, still lying, still part of this. I called her old number, straight to voicemail. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. Old contacts, mutual friends, even her brother's Facebook page. Nothing. Just curated memories, family dinners, beach trips, photos of her smiling like nothing had ever cracked beneath the surface. But then I found something. A tag, one I'd never seen before. It was on a group photo from a charity event last year. L. Cross, Director, Haven Initiative. The logo on her shirt matched the new shelter's name. The same place I'd just visited. Lily hadn't disappeared. She'd reinvented herself. And she was still working in the same system that had failed Harper. By the time morning came, I'd made up my mind. Ethan was still asleep, his small body curled under his blanket, his steady breathing the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I kissed his forehead. "I'll be back soon, buddy." He stirred, eyes fluttering open. "You're going to work." Something like that, I said softly. The lie tasted bitter. The Haven Initiative was 30 miles north, in a renovated brick building that used to be an old community center. When I arrived, volunteers were hauling boxes through the rain, laughing. The place looked clean, hopeful, new, like the kind of world Lily had always wanted to be seen building. I asked the receptionist if she was in. The woman's face lit up. "Oh, Lily? She's just finishing a meeting in Conference Room B. You can wait if you'd like." I nodded, every heartbeat sounding like a hammer in my ears. I watched the glass door until she appeared, tall, confident, wearing that same calm expression she used to wear when everything around us was falling apart. She didn't notice me at first, but when she did, she froze mid-step. "Daniel." Her voice was soft, too soft, like she'd rehearsed that tone for years. We stood there, strangers with shared ghosts. "You look different," she said finally. "Older." "So do you," I replied. She smiled faintly, eyes flicking to the staff watching us. Can we talk somewhere private? I followed her down the hall to a small office. The smell of coffee and disinfectant hit me like a memory. She closed the door, folded her arms, and waited. I found something. I began. I assumed you did, she said calmly. I stared at her. You filed that report. Against Harper. Her jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to see that. Why? Because it would ruin your saint act. She sighed, the kind of sigh that comes when someone's done hiding too long. Daniel, you don't understand. There were things happening back then, things I couldn't stop. The shelter was being used to cover up cases the department didn't want public. I filed that report to keep her alive. By making her look like a liar. I snapped. By burying the truth. She was 16, she said sharply, and she'd already been through hell. If she kept talking, they would have silenced her for good. I shook my head. So you silence her first. Lily looked away. The silence stretched like wire between us. Finally, she said, I did what I had to. You think I didn't lose sleep? You think it didn't kill me to lie to you? I wanted to yell, to break something, to make her feel what Harper must have felt. But all I could manage was, you let me believe she was unstable. You let me believe she needed saving. Lily's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. She did need saving, she whispered. You just didn't realize who from. What do you mean? She hesitated, then pulled open a drawer. From it, she took out a single file, thin, manila, worn. She wasn't just a victim, Daniel. She was a witness. She saw things involving men who funded that shelter. She named one of them. She slid the file toward me. When I opened it, my heart stopped, because the name written there wasn't unfamiliar. It was mine. I stared at it, the letters bleeding into one another, my mind refusing to process. This is insane, I muttered. That's not possible. She thought you were one of them, Lily said quietly. She told me you took her home one night, that you offered her money to keep quiet. I didn't believe her, not at first, but when the police started asking questions about you. I stuttered, my voice breaking. I never touched her, Lily. I was trying to help. I know that now, she said softly. But back then, I didn't know who to trust. Her words sliced through me. I thought back to that night years ago, Harper crying in the rain, begging me not to call anyone, not to send her back. And how I called Lily anyway. I thought I'd done the right thing. But what if that call had sealed her fate? I stood up, shaking, fury and confusion blurring together. Where is she now? Lily hesitated. You shouldn't go after her, Daniel. She's not the same girl you remember. She's been collecting things, files, evidence. She's angry, and she's convinced she can destroy everyone who hurt her. She's already started, I said. She's been following me. She left me those files. Lily went pale. She what? She knows about the report. About you. Lily's mouth cracked then. Fear flashed behind her composure. Then it's already begun, she murmured. What's begun? She didn't answer right away. When she finally looked up, her expression was unreadable. She's not after you, Daniel. She's after all of us. Outside, the rain came down harder. Lily walked me to the door, her voice low. If she reaches the wrong people with that evidence, they'll come after her. And you. I turned to her. You mean the people who funded this place? She didn't respond, but her silence told me everything. As I walked out into the storm, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number again. You finally found her. Now it's your turn to choose who to believe. Attached was a photo. It was Lily, taken from outside her office window. My blood ran cold. That night, I barely slept. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the occasional gust of wind against the window. Ethan stirred once, whispering in his sleep, "Dad, don't let her in again." I froze, staring at him. "Who?" I whispered. He didn't answer. But as I walked to the living room, I saw something that made my stomach twist, muddy footprints leading from the back door to the couch. The same couch she'd slept on that first night. And on the cushion lay another envelope. Inside, a single photograph. Lily, me, and Harper, all together. Taken the night before Harper disappeared. I couldn't remember that night being photographed. But there it was. And behind us, in the blurred background, stood someone else. A man in a dark coat. Face turned just enough for me to recognize him. My old supervisor at the shelter. The one Lily once had retired early. The one who'd been accused, but never charged. Everything started falling into place then. Too fast, too heavy. This wasn't just betrayal between lovers, or guilt between friends. It was a chain reaction of silence, lies, and protection. And Harper, she wasn't just looking for closure. She was trying to finish what none of us had the courage to start. But if that was true, then she wasn't just watching anymore. She was hunting. The photograph wouldn't leave my mind. The three of us, me, Lily, and Harper, frozen in a moment I didn't remember living. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at it under the low light of the lamp, the hum of the refrigerator faint in the background. The man behind us in the photo, the one in the dark coat, was unmistakable. Richard Lewis, former director of the East Bridge Youth Shelter, a man who vanished after quiet resignation. The same R. Lewis Lily had scrawled in the margins of Harper's old file. And now, Harper's story was circling back to him. To us. My chest felt heavy with a kind of guilt that didn't even have a clear name yet. Guilt that came from realizing you might have helped bury someone else's pain without even knowing. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to piece together the timeline. Harper had vanished the night after that photo was taken. Lily had filed a report days later. Lewis had disappeared within weeks. Now, years later, Harper was back, and she wanted the truth ripped open, no matter who bled. I tried calling Lily again, but her number was suddenly out of service. I sent her an email. No reply. By morning, I convinced myself I needed to see Lewis. If he was still alive. The last public trace of him was an article from 7 years ago, some vague mention of consulting work for a private foundation out of state. But the company's website was gone, the phone number disconnected. Still, I had something else. An address listed in the old city archives. A small farmhouse 40 miles south. The road there cut through a fog-draped stretch of forest, the kind of drive where radio static becomes your only company. By the time I reached the turnoff, the afternoon light had turned orange and gray, like the day couldn't decide between life and death. The farmhouse looked abandoned, paint peeling, grass overgrown, windows clouded. But a faint light flickered inside. I parked the car and walked up slowly, every step crunching on gravel. When I knocked, the door opened halfway on its own. "Hello." I called. No answer. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rot. Furniture covered in sheets. A table stacked with yellowed folders. And on top of the pile, one folder marked cross. My pulse quickened as I pulled it open. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Some of Harper, at the shelter, walking home, sitting on a park bench. Some of Lily, speaking at events, leaving the police station. And some of me, taken from a distance, at work, at Ethan's school, at home. Someone had been watching all of us. Then I heard the creak of a floorboard behind me, looking for something. I turned. Richard Lewis stood in the doorway. Older now, gray hair, hollow eyes, but his voice still carried that smug calmness I remembered from years ago. "Mr. Cross," he said, stepping inside, "you should have stayed out of this." I tightened my grip on the folder. "You did this to her. You destroyed that girl's life." He tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "Destroyed? No. She was a runaway. Troubled. We helped her." "Helped her?" I spat. "You covered up what happened. You silenced her. You let my wife file a false report." Lewis smiled faintly. "Your wife was very cooperative. Smart woman. Knew which side of family's safety depended on." My stomach dropped. What does that mean? She understood that the shelter had benefactors, men who didn't want their good deeds questioned. She made the right choice. She always did. I stepped closer. "Where's Harper?" Lewis's smile faded, still asking the wrong questions. Before I could respond, there was a sudden sound, glass shattering behind us. Lewis turned sharply toward the window. I caught a glimpse of a shadow outside, a figure moving fast through the overgrown yard. Then the sound of a car door slamming. I rushed to the window, but all I saw was tail lights disappearing into fog. Harper, she'd been here, watching us. When I turned back, Lewis was gone. The front door stood wide open, swaying slightly in the wind. I ran outside, shouting his name, but only the echo of my own voice came back. The fog had swallowed everything. And when I got back to the car, there was something tucked under my windshield wiper. A note written in messy, rushed handwriting. You were there too. Check the tape. That night, I barely made it home before the storm hit. Rain slammed against the windows again, just like that first night. Ethan was asleep at a friend's house for the weekend, which should have been a relief, but the silence felt heavier without him. I sat at the kitchen table with the box Harper had left. I hadn't noticed it before, but there was a USB drive taped beneath the lid. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, then a video began. Grainy security footage. The shelter hallway. Time-stamped November 10th, 2011, 9:42 p.m. A younger me walked down the corridor, holding a file. Lily followed behind, speaking urgently. Then Harper appeared at the far end, arguing, crying. The sound was faint, but her voice carried. You said you'd protect me. You promise. I watched myself grab her arm. Not hard, but enough, trying to calm her. She pulled away. Then the lights flickered. Lily stepped between us, whispering something I couldn't hear. And then another man entered the frame. Lewis. He touched Harper's shoulder, said something to Lily, then turned toward me. And I just walked away. Left her there. My throat went dry. I'd always believed she ran away that night. But I'd walked away first. I'd left her alone with him. No wonder she thought I was part of it. I slammed the laptop shut, chest heaving, the guilt crawling up my throat like acid. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the glass of water I reached for. That's when I saw it. A reflection in the kitchen window. Someone standing in the yard. A flash of wet hair. Pale face. Harper. I ran outside, rain soaking through my shirt instantly. She stood by the mailbox again, exactly where Ethan had said she'd been before. Harper. I shouted. Please, wait. She didn't move. Just watched me, eyes wide and unreadable. I saw the video. I said, voice cracking. You're right. I left you there. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know what he was going to do. For a moment, her expression softened. Then she said, you could have stopped it. I know, I whispered, but I can now. Tell me what you want me to do. Lightning flashed, white and violent, and in that instant, she was gone. I stood in the rain until my body went numb. When I finally went back inside, there was mud on the porch again, and another note pinned to the door. She's next. Don't let her lie again. The she could only mean Lily, and if Harper truly meant what I thought she did, then I was running out of time. Rain pressed against the windows like restless fingers, drumming out a rhythm that wouldn't stop. Every sound in the house felt louder after Harper disappeared. The tick of the clock, the hum of the fridge, Ethan's quiet breathing upstairs. Even the air felt hollow, stretched thin by the note she'd left behind. She's next. Don't let her lie again. I read it over and over until the words blurred. My mind kept circling the same conclusion. Harper was going after Lily. And after everything I'd seen, after the footage, after the half-truths, part of me wasn't even sure she was wrong. But she was dangerous now, desperate. I had to find her before something irreversible happened. I started with calls. First Lily's number, then the shelter's landline, then her old work contact. No answer. Finally, someone picked up, a soft, nervous voice introducing herself as Claire from Haven Initiative. When she heard my name, she hesitated. Then, quietly, she said, Mr. Cross, haven't you heard? I gripped the phone tighter. Heard what? Mrs. Cross didn't come in today. The police found her car near the river an hour ago. Driver's door open. Purse still inside. For a moment, My brain refused to process the words. The silence on the line filled with static, or maybe just a sound of blood rushing in my ears. Was she? I couldn't even finish. "They are still searching," Claire whispered, and hung up. I was already moving. I don't remember the drive, only the wet road flashing beneath the headlights and the steering wheel slipping beneath my hands. By the time I reached the river, red and blue lights were strobing against the water. Officers in rain gear combed the muddy bank. One tried to stop me, but I shouted Lily's name until someone finally came forward. A detective, tall, his coat soaked dark. "Daniel Cross?" he asked. "You were her husband." "Ex-husband," I said automatically. "Have you found her?" "Not yet, but we found 2 sets of footprints near the bridge. Looks like she met someone here last night." He hesitated. "We also found a phone. The last call she received was from a Harper Ray. Does that name mean anything to you?" My throat tightened. "Yes, it does." They let me walk to the edge of the tape. The car was still there, door open, headlights dimming, a thermos of coffee half full on the passenger seat. Lily's scarf, the one she always wore to work, hung over the gishift like she dropped it in a hurry. The mud around the door was slick with boot prints. Not hairs. Larger. Something metallic caught my eye near the reeds, a bracelet glinting under the weak floodlights. Lily's bracelet. I picked it up, but beside it lay something else, a small plastic case with a flash drive sealed inside. I didn't tell the cops. I slipped it into my pocket and left. Back home, the house felt colder than it should have. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. One file appeared. Last Lie.mp4. The video opened to Lily sitting in her office, hair pulled back, her expression tight. "If anyone finds this," she began, voice trembling, "it means Harper's alive, and she's coming for me. I deserve some of it. But not all. Lewis wasn't the only one. There were others, board members, donors. We covered for them because we were told to. Harper tried to expose it once, but someone stopped her. Daniel, if you see this, please keep Ethan safe. Don't trust anyone who says they are helping." The office door opened behind her. Lily's eyes darted up, startled. "Harper, please. We can fix this." A voice off camera, low and frayed, said, "No more fixing. No more lies." Then the video cut to black. The sound that filled the silence after was my own breathing, shallow and uneven. I didn't even notice the phone vibrating until the screen lit up, "Unknown caller." I answered. "Hello." "Daniel." Harper's voice, calm and slow. "You saw it." "Where is she?" "You know why this is to end," she said. "You don't have to do this. We can go to the police. Tell them everything." "They already had their chance," she snapped. "They buried the truth once. I'm just unearthing it." "Ethan's here," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "He remembers you. He saw you outside. He's scared." Her tone softened. "He looks like you used to, when you still believed good people could fix bad things." "Harper, I'm not your enemy, Daniel." "Then stop." There was a pause. Then she said, almost tenderly, "That's why you're the one who has to end it." The line went dead. I traced the signal. It led to a warehouse by the docks, one of those places you drive past 100 times and never notice. The sky was the color of wet concrete when I got there. Rain dripped through broken skylights. The air smelled of rust and salt. My flashlight beam swept over crates and twisted metal until it hit movement. Harper stepped from the shadows. Her clothes were soaked, her hair plastered to her face, but her eyes were alive, fever bright. Behind her, Lily sat on the floor, wrists bound, a gag around her mouth. She was alive. "Let her go," I said, keeping my voice steady. Harper's hand trembled around a small black pistol. "You think you can still save her? After what she did?" "I know she lied," I said carefully. "I saw the video. But this isn't justice, Harper. She recorded me. She sold me out. She let him go free." "I believe you," I said. "But this isn't the way. You can't undo what happened by destroying what's left." She laughed, a harsh, hollow sound. There was never a way for people like me. Just silence or screaming. I took a slow step closer, then chose silence. Just this once. Stop. Lily managed to mumble through the gag. I pulled it free. She gasped, eyes wild. She's lying, Daniel. She already. The gun went off. The sound was deafening. I flinched, expecting to hit, but the shot buried itself in the wall beside me. Harper dropped the gun, shaking uncontrollably. I can't do it, she whispered, voice cracking. I thought if I made her afraid, I'd stop feeling like that girl again. But it never goes away. I crossed the space between us, grabbed her hands, still trembling. Then let it go now. Let it end. She nodded, tears streaking through the grime on her face. You really think I can still be saved? I didn't answer. I just held her tighter. When the police burst in minutes later, sirens wailing, flashlights cutting through the dark, Harper didn't resist. She stood silent as they handcuffed her, eyes distant, resigned. Lily was taken to an ambulance, clutching a blanket, refusing to look at either of us. As they led Harper past me, she met my gaze for a single heartbeat. There was no hatred left there, only a deep, hollow relief. A week later, I sat in a sterile interview room as detectives went over the evidence. The flash drive had broken everything open. Corruption, bribes, a network of donors who'd paid to bury the truth. Lily was facing trial. Lewis was missing, but they were closing in. Harper was transferred to psychiatric custody. They said she needed treatment, not punishment. Before she was taken away, she'd asked me for one thing. Promise me Ethan will never see me as a monster you thought I was. I told her I would. Months passed. The house became quiet again. I tried to rebuild something normal for Ethan. We watched old home videos one night, him as a toddler, chasing our dog in the yard. He laughed, pointing. Dad, who's that lady on the porch? I frowned. What lady? He pointed to the corner of the screen. A figure stood half-hidden near the fence. Dark hair, watching, smiling faintly. It was Harper. The date stamp read October 3rd, 2024, the night she knocked on my door. I froze a frame, staring at her faint outline. Maybe she hadn't come by chance. Maybe she'd been watching us for years, waiting for the truth to have its day. Outside, the rain started again, soft and steady, tapping against the window like a heartbeat. I see you now, I whispered to the image on the screen. And for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel haunted. It felt like peace finally remembering my name. It's strange how quiet justice sounds. No sirens, no shouting, no bright lights or slamming doors. Just paperwork, sterile rooms, and the endless hum of a vending machine outside the precinct hallway. Weeks after Harper's arrest, that hum had become the soundtrack of my life. Lily was out on bail. The prosecutors called her a key cooperating witness, which felt like a polite way of saying she was trying to save herself. The shelter was closed pending investigation. Every time her name appeared on the news, I felt something twist inside me, part anger, part pity, part exhaustion. Harper's name, though, rarely made the broadcasts. The media didn't know what to do with her. Was she a victim or a villain, a survivor or a threat? They called her the unstable whistleblower, the unreliable witness, the runaway case. None of them knew she still wrote letters. The first arrived 2 weeks after her transfer. Plain envelope, no return address. I almost threw it out, thinking it was another legal notice. Inside was a single sheet written in shaky cursive. You told me once that truth feels like a wound before it heals. I used to think you were wrong. Now I think maybe you were just ahead of me. Don't hate Lily. She's not who you think she is anymore. But neither am I. Tell Ethan I'm learning how to sleep again. Sometimes, in dreams, he's at the river, throwing stones, laughing. Maybe that's how peace starts. I read it a dozen times before I folded it away. A month later came another letter. They're asking me questions I can't answer. They say someone leaked my file before I showed up at your house. Someone called the shelter pretending to be from social services, asking for my records. I thought it was Lily, but it wasn't her. You should check your phone logs. Daniel. The night I knocked on your door wasn't the first time someone called. I didn't understand what she meant until later. That night, unable to shake the thought, I went through my phone history. Most calls were routine, school updates, spam numbers, work contacts, but two stood out. Both were marked no caller ID. Same day, hours before Harper showed up. The first was just a few seconds long. The second was almost a minute. I'd assumed it was a telemarketer or maybe one of Lily's automated legal alerts. But Harper's words kept echoing. It wasn't her. I called the detective in charge of the case, a man named Reese, who always sounded like he'd been awake for 3 days. When I told him about the calls, he sighed. We'll trace them. Probably nothing, but thanks for mentioning it. It didn't feel like nothing. That same week, Ethan came home from school with a drawing, stick figures under a blue sky, a big house, and a woman standing beside them. That's you, Dad, he said, pointing. And that's me. And that's the lady who helped me cross the street last week. The woman had long dark hair, a scarf around her neck. Did she tell you her name? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He shook his head. No, but she said she used to know you. She said to tell you she's sorry. My chest went cold. Ethan, where did this happen? By the park, he said. She gave me a coin, said it was lucky. He pulled it from his pocket, a small brass token, tarnished, etched with the words Haven Initiative. That night I called Detective Reese again. He told me it was impossible. Harper was still in psychiatric custody, heavily monitored, nowhere near the city. But his tone faltered, uncertain. We'll double-check, he said, and hung up. For days, I barely slept. I kept expecting a knock on the door again, the same soft rhythm from that first night. It never came. But the feeling didn't leave, the sense that something unfinished was still moving beneath the surface, waiting. 2 weeks later, Reese called back. You were right, he said. Those anonymous calls to your phone came from an encrypted number. We traced the route. It pinged off a tower near the courthouse. The courthouse? I said. Whose phone was it? He hesitated, papers rustling on the other end. Lily's. That's impossible. I checked. She was at the shelter that day. Maybe not. The timestamp's exact. And here's the part you won't like. There was another call made from the same number 5 minutes before the first one, to Harper's last known contact number. My voice felt dry. You're saying Lily called her first? Looks that way. I hung up before he could say more. I spent hours at night replaying everything. The first knock on my door, Harper's haunted eyes, Lily's trembling voice when she told me she was trying to fix things. What if Harper hadn't found me by accident? What if Lily had sent her? The next day, I drove to the hospital where Lily was being treated under supervision while awaiting trial. Visiting hours were strict, and when I said my name, the nurse gave me a look that said she didn't approve. But she led me down a corridor that smelled faintly of antiseptic and something else. Old fear, maybe. Lily looked smaller than I remembered, sitting in a gray sweater, her wrists bare where the bracelet used to be. When she saw me, her eyes filled with something that wasn't surprise. It was guilt. You called her, I said quietly. Her hands shook as she set down her cup. You shouldn't be here. You called Harper before she came to me. Why? I was trying to protect her, she whispered. I thought if she found you first, she'd trust you. You were the only one who ever cared enough to listen. I didn't think she'd. I didn't know what she'd do. I stared at her. You made her believe I could fix it. Tears welled in her eyes. She was going to kill herself that night, Daniel. I thought if she had someone to go to, someone safe, she might stop. So you sent her to me. She nodded. I thought I was saving her. The words fell like stones into the silence. I wanted to scream, to blame her, but all I could see was the image of Harper standing in the rain that night, trembling, broken, but alive because of that one decision. When I finally spoke, my voice barely held. One call changed everything. I said, You were the call. Lily reached across the table, fingers trembling. I'm sorry, for all of it. I left without touching her hand. Outside, the wind cut sharp and cold across the parking lot. The clouds hung low, the kind that promised rain. I thought about Harper, locked somewhere sterile and quiet, writing letters she knew I might never answer. I thought about Lily, drowning in her own guilt. And I thought about Ethan, drawing strangers who said they were sorry. The past wasn't gone. It was just quieter now, breathing softly through walls. When I got home that evening, I found a final letter waiting in the mailbox. The handwriting was Harper's, though shakier than before. They said I'll be moved soon, somewhere quieter. I don't know if this will reach you. I dreamed again last night. The river was calm this time. Lily was there, too. She said you finally understood. I think forgiveness is just another kind of truth, one that doesn't need to be proven. Tell Ethan I'm sorry I scared him. Tell him the coin really is lucky. I folded the letter and placed it inside the same drawer as the others. Then I looked out at the rain starting to fall again, slow and steady, painting the world in silver. For the first time, I realized the truth didn't just break you. It reshaped you. And maybe that was the only way peace ever began. The rain hadn't stopped in days. It came in sheets, washing the color out of everything. The sky, the road, the town itself. Even the trees outside the window seemed tired, their branches drooping under the weight. I watched them from the couch, the same one Harper had once slept on, the same one where this entire storm had begun. Ethan was asleep upstairs, his toy cars still scattered across the carpet. Every so often I'd hear him murmur in his dreams, small sounds that reminded me how fragile peace really was. I kept the lamp on, though the power had flickered twice already. Maybe I was afraid of the dark again, not because of what was in it, but because of what it made me remember. Harper's last letter sat open on the table. I'd read it so many times the paper was starting to soften at the folds. I didn't know if I believed her words about forgiveness, or if they were just something she wrote to make both of us feel less haunted. But I couldn't throw it away. It felt like the only piece of her that was still real. When the knock came, it was almost gentle. 3 short raps against the door. Familiar. For a second, I couldn't move. Then I stood, heart hammering, and opened it. Detective Reese stood on the porch, coat dripping, face drawn tight with fatigue. Behind him, rain blurred the world into a smear of gray and red light. "Sorry for the late visit," he said, stepping inside. I didn't want to do this over the phone. My chest tightened. Do what? He took off his hat, eyes meeting mine. We had an incident at the psychiatric facility. I already knew what he was going to say. I felt it before he said a word. "Harper," I asked quietly. "She's gone," he said. "Sometime last night. They think she walked out during a shift change. No sign of forced exit. No alarms. Just gone." I sat down before my knees gave out. "You mean escaped?" Reese hesitated. "That's one word for it. But here's the strange part. She left something behind for you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. No note, no label, just my name written in faint blue ink. "She told the nurse to deliver it if anything ever happened," Reese said. "Said you'd understand." I stared at the package, unable to speak. Reese stood awkwardly, rain still dripping from his coat. "We'll find her. I promise you that." When he left, the silence that followed felt enormous. I sat there for a long time before I finally untied the string. Inside was an old cassette tape, the kind I hadn't seen since college, and a folded photograph. The photo was of Harper, maybe 19 or 20, sitting on the steps of an old church. She was smiling, the same shy, uncertain smile she'd worn that first morning in my kitchen. Behind her, I recognized someone else, Lily, younger, laughing, their arms around each other. On the back of the photo, in Harper's handwriting, were 5 words, "We both called you once." I stared at it, the rain outside growing louder. I didn't understand at first. Then I looked at the tape. There was no label, but the date written faintly in pen read October 2nd, 2024, the night before Harper had come to my door. I dug through drawers until I found an old cassette player from the attic, one I'd used to record Ethan's first words years ago. My hands trembled as I slid the tape in and pressed play. Static hissed, then a voice, Harper's, soft, uncertain. "If you're hearing this, I guess I didn't know how else to start. I used to think Lily was my enemy, but she wasn't. Not really. She just did what she thought would save herself. Maybe I did too. Maybe that's what betrayal really is, survival wearing someone else's skin." There was a pause, a shaky breath. You don't know this, Daniel, but I called you before that night. You didn't pick up. I listened to your voicemail 3 times before hanging up. I was scared. I didn't know if you'd remember me. You probably wouldn't, but I remembered you. From the shelter, from the way you looked at us like we weren't just broken things. Her voice wavered, and I could hear rain in the background, just like now. Lily gave me your number. She said you'd help. But what she didn't tell me was that she'd called you first. She told you a story about a girl who might show up, said she needed a place to stay, said she was lost. She didn't tell you the truth about why. You didn't know who I really was. You just opened the door. A low laugh, almost a sob. That's why I said it changed your life. Because one call wasn't mine, and one was. You answered both, you just didn't realize it. The tape crackled again, faintly distorted. I don't know if I'll ever be free of what happened. But if I can't be, maybe you can. Maybe that's enough. Silence followed, except for the faint sound of waves, or maybe wind. Then the tape clicked off. I sat there, motionless, as the last of the static faded into the room. My reflection in the dark window looked like a stranger's. Harper and Lily, both had called me. Both had set this in motion. One to save her, one to save herself. And I'd answered without knowing who was on the other side. I leaned back on the couch, the weight of it all pressing down. 2 women, 2 versions of the same wound, both trying to claw their way back to something like forgiveness. And me, somewhere in between, pretending I could be the one to fix it. Ethan's footsteps pattered down the stairs. "Dad," he murmured, sleepy-eyed. "You're still up?" "Yeah, Bud," I said softly. "Go back to bed." He shuffled closer, noticed a photo in my hand. "Is that the lady from a video?" I hesitated. "Yeah." Her name was Harper. He stared at the photo for a long moment, then asked, was she good or bad? The question hit harder than it should have. I wanted to say good, but the word didn't feel true. I wanted to say bad, but that felt worse. So I told him the only thing that made sense. She was human, I said. Sometimes that's harder than being either. He nodded like he understood, then went back upstairs, his small footsteps fading into silence. I stayed awake until dawn. The storm finally broke, and the first thin light crept through the blinds. Outside, the street glistened, washed clean, at least for a while. I watched it and thought of the river, the bridge, the car door left open. I thought of Lily's shaking voice in that video, Harper's trembling hands, the way both had looked at me like I could be the difference between drowning and surviving. Maybe in some small way, I was. But not because I saved them. Because I saw them, finally, fully, for who they were. Before I went to bed, I rewound the tape to the beginning and played it once more. The static rose and fell like breathing, and when Harper's voice filled the room again, it didn't sound broken anymore. It sounded free. "Maybe that's what truth really is," she said softly. "Not the thing that hurts you, but the thing that keeps you alive long enough to heal." I let the tape play until the end, then turned it off. The house was quiet again, peaceful, but not empty, just honest. Outside, the sun finally broke through clouds, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I felt part of it. And sometimes, that's enough.